I'm going to tell you the truth about lesson planning. Hi everyone, welcome to Talk and Chalk. I'm Beck. I'm an assistant principal in Southwest Sydney, and this is my pre-service teachers series. I can't believe I said that without stumbling over my tongue. When I talk about that, I'm talking about people who are studying to become teachers. So if you're at uni, doing prac, or an early career teacher, maybe you've only just finished your studies at university and you've just started teaching, hopefully these videos will be beneficial for you. If you're new to my channel, welcome. All of my links and everything are in the description below. You just click on the little arrow that's there and you'll drop down to all my social media. I don't spam or sell anything. I just like to share my tips and advice in the hopes that it helps other people. So today I'm going to be talking about lesson planning. This was the biggest frustration for me when I started teaching, because I discovered you don't write lesson plans when you start teaching the same way that you do when you're at uni. I'm sure many of you have probably discovered that by now if you've gotten to prac and then seen any of your mentor teachers programs. And depending on the school that you're at, everyone has their own templates, everyone has their own different systems, you put things in different orders, and even though essentially the bulk or content of what you're doing kind of stays the same, the logistics of it is what changes between teachers. And I love the fact that you can have some ownership over your own planning and programming, which is really, really good. But sometimes it's great to have that whole school consistency in what you're doing. So I'm not actually going to talk about how you write a lesson plan. You can go to any website, you can go to Google, type in lesson plan, and there's millions out there already. If you're looking for templates, go to Teachers Pay Teachers, go to Teach This, go to Teach Starter, go to Twinkle, or I can't even think of other ones now at the moment. There's heaps out there. If you're on the wonderful Facebook group, the On Butterfly Wings group, everyone shares. You'll see thousands of different templates on there. It's not about that. It's about the content that goes into it. And regardless of what state or system you're in, whether you're overseas, what goes into it is essentially the same thing. It's kind of like a story. You've got your beginning, middle, and end on what happens in your lesson, and there are going to be transitions between them, and there's going to be different things that happen. The content will change, like books change. And what you need to put into it is, what are the kids working towards? What do they already know? What are you hoping to get out of it? What actually happens, your feedback and evaluation. So you're going to have your outcomes in there. You're going to have resources. You're going to have the actual steps of what it takes to do. You might put in prompt questions. You might put in an actual script for yourself on what you're going to be saying. And when you first start doing prac, I think that's very important to do. When you're learning how to structure a lesson, it is important to set out, exactly what you're going to say, what you're hoping to get from the kids, any kind of prompts you're going to give them to get to that point where you can go, all right, they're getting it. This is what we're working towards. They're getting it. And then how you're going to round things up at the end of the lesson or the activity. It's important that you do split it up like that. Once you've been teaching for a while though, you won't need those cues. You won't necessarily need the prompt questions. Sometimes it's good to have in there so that if you're going to go back to that particular lesson or activity again, you'll have them there to remind you. You'll find though that you won't need to be so specific about the generalistic type of things that happen in lessons. So if you're going to do, a brainstorming activity, the first time that you write that lesson plan, you might write down things like, put a circle in the middle, put the first line out and do blah, do the next line out and do blah. The next time you do that, you're just going to do a brainstorm. You won't need all the specifics of doing it because you would have done it a lot. So we tend to program in units, in weeks, in blocks. And when you put those things down, you might just put the warm-up activity, you might put an overview of the week and have all those different things that you're going to work to across the week, because you might not get through it all on that one day. You might not find your focal point on that one day. You might need a few days to get to it. But again, you'll find units, lesson plans anywhere if you just Google. I'm going to talk more about those logistics of what happens when you're planning for a lesson. So you need to think about the best time of day that lesson is actually going to occur. And there's things that are involved with that. Sorry, I'm looking down because I've got my notebook again. Lots and lots of suggestions in here for future videos. So if you've got one, stick it in the comments. So, okay, the time of day that it's going to happen. So generally, you know, we do English in the morning, maths in the middle of the day, and your other KLAs at the end of the day. And that's because there's a big focus on literacy and numeracy, depending on the school that you're in. And those other subjects can kind of get tied into that cross-curricular stuff. So if you're doing something in the morning where the focus is actually the writing, the grammar, the spelling, you might be doing it about volcanoes, which is tied in with your science stuff that you do in the afternoon. So the kids have kind of got that knowledge in their head when they get to the hands-on stuff in the afternoon. You can tie it together that way. But if you are going to do something on volcanoes, you need to plan ahead for having that space ready. If you've had a maths lesson just before it and the kids have made, you know, 3D pyramids and all the 3D pyramids are sitting around the classroom, what are you going to do with those when you do the volcano lesson in the afternoon? Are you going to have to go outside? Are you going to have to pack them away? Do they need to be stored? Are they going to get smushed when they go into the kids' bags? So you've got to think about the whole day in that format and figure out where in the day that's going to happen. Figuring out the location of where that's going to happen and the timing of how long it will actually take to do it, because you need to think of setup time, pack up time, if you need to be in a different space, how long it's going to take you to walk down and walk back, because I can guarantee you that 30-second walk will actually take you 2 minutes when you have to stop and tell someone off, or someone's forgotten their hat, or someone wants to get a drink. Thinking about those timings of what happens. Finding those resources in your school. If you're, I'm going to stick with the volcanoes thing, if you are making that at school, you need bicarb soda. Does your school have bicarb soda or vinegar? Do you have to go and shop for that? Are you going to have to go and buy that 2 days beforehand and store that somewhere? I personally try not to bring in resources the morning of the experiment, because you will always forget one thing that you need, and then you'll have to run to the shops or something and get it. I try and bring it in 2 days beforehand, have it there, make sure I've ticked off my checklist for the activity that's going to come in a couple of days, because that's when you'll think of random last minute things. So if you are making the volcano, you need trays, you need, you know, maybe alfoil. You need to make sure it's in a space where you're not going to stain the floor when you do the eruptions. Or if you are doing that, don't do it on a day when you've got a staff meeting in the afternoon, because you've got to hose off the concrete afterwards from the stains that you've made. If you need the students to bring something in, so if you're doing an activity where, you know, they need to bring in a baby photo or something like that, give them plenty of notice to do that. Not all parents have printers or access to, you know, photo labs and things like that. The parents might ask if they can email you the photo so that you can print it out at school. You need to allow time for those things. If you're spending money buying any of this stuff as well, keep your receipts, because you can claim that stuff on tax. I just keep all of my receipts in a Cliplock bag that has the year on it. So at the moment, it currently says tax receipts 2017-2018. And anytime I get a receipt, I just chuck it in there. And then when it comes to tax time, I take them all out, I add them all up, I put the total on the front of the bag, and I go to the accountant and I say, here you go, there's my total. She trusts me, she knows what's in there. Sometimes they'll go through, but at least you've got it in case you get, you know, audited or anything. You can, you know, show what they were all for. Side note though, why don't receipts keep their printing on them these days? Like, they fade really quickly, right? Moving on. I did setting up. So the use of the space as well, depending on how many resources you've got, are your kids going to have to be in pairs, groups, whole class? Are you going to do it and demonstrate while they watch? And if that's the case, are you going to video it? Have one of the kids taking photos so that you can document it? Are you going to take photos so they've got something to stick into, a portfolio or whatever they've been working on, sharing it on Dojo. So make sure that, you've got enough resources for what it is that you want to do. And the space that you've got has enough room to do that. You might need to do half of the class in one session and then half of the class in another session. You might need to book a space to do this. So, for example, if you're doing something STEM related, you might need to book into a makerspace or the hall or the library, anything like that. So you need to check if you need to book well in advance in case someone else is using it. Have things planned in case you finish early. So we've erupted our volcanoes and there's still 20 minutes until the bell goes. What do we do now? You need to have some of those things prepared. And sometimes it's good to have a bank of those at the beginning of the term, or the block or whatever it is that you're doing, just so you can pull those out ready to go. You've got them ready regardless of if you need them or not. If you don't use them, fine, they're there for another time. If you can tie it into the activity that you're doing, the lesson that you're doing, then all the more better. If you're running overtime, you need to watch the time. You're the time monitor. Even if it means setting a timer every time you do a lesson for the first year of doing lessons. You go in and it's 2:00. Kids are putting their hats away, putting their lunch boxes away. Someone hasn't been to the toilet yet. They've got to go to the toilet. Someone left their jumper out on the field. Before you know it, it's 2:10. And you know the bell goes at 2:55. And you know it's going to be messy, which means you need to start packing up at 2:45. So you've got to monitor yourself. And there's no point rushing through a lesson just for the sake of getting to the end of the lesson. Don't jump over any quality content. Go through that content, go through the quality, and let the kids know, right, the next thing we're going to be doing is blah. We've run out of time to do that today though. Hold that in your heads. We're going to do that tomorrow. Okay, guys? And that's what happens. And you just note it down in your variations to routine. You note down that you had to split it up over 2 sessions instead of 1, and that the reason was blah, blah, blah. Stuff comes up. Shit happens. We know. Making sure that the support materials that you're using tie in with the syllabus, the outcomes, the content that you're working towards, and making sure that it meets any kind of WHS requirements. So, the volcano's fine. There's as long as no kids in your class are allergic to vinegar or any of the ingredients that go with it, we're not actually erupting anything. It's just a mess maker. And it's a good way for kids to see things like that. If you're doing anything that involves certain depths of water, chemicals, things like that, those are the things you need to check if there's any kind of special requirements, paperwork, that sort of thing you've got to fill in. That's just to protect you. Don't go nuts with worksheets. You don't need worksheets all the time. Whiteboard markers. Worksheets are not the answer. If anything, less is more when it comes to worksheets. However, if you find a good worksheet and you think that what's on there is a great activity, don't be afraid to tweak it and modify it, or show it and then the kids do something else. You don't have to be printing things all the time to do that. Worksheets have a place. Sometimes they're awesome. If you've got a class of kids that really struggle with drawing diagrams or labeling or filling in grids, drawing up their own grids and stuff, have that printed. If the focus isn't how to draw a grid, but what goes inside it, sure, worksheet away, get those done. If it's a maths lesson and part of the maths lesson is ruling up a grid, putting titles and putting in tally marks, they should be doing that themselves. It shouldn't be printed for them if part of that is the focus of the activity. Keep in mind that future focused learning is there. So utilizing your different lessons and activities to use those different learning modes, collaborative, we want experiential, we want kids to be demonstrating and giving feedback, and some of it will be explicit with you, with the teacher. There is stuff on learning modes. Remember, I'm government, so if you type in DEC and SW learning modes, you'll find stuff on the website. If you've got any access to student data, so if you're planning for a literacy or a numeracy lesson, utilize any data that's available. So if you're going in for a prac and you've got that time to prepare for it, talk to the teacher about what data is there, where are the kids working at, what are they working towards. That's always the goal. Where are they at? What are they working towards? Do they have goals? Do they have specific goals? Are they kind of moving in a general area, or are they being exposed to something new? Keeping in mind how you're going to transition to the next lesson. So you might be coming in from a library session and then going into a writing session. How are you going to get them back and settled and calm before starting that lesson? Will it transition from the library session? Does the library session start the content of what they're learning, and are you carrying it on? Are you carrying on something from 2 days prior to what you're doing now? These are the things you need to keep in mind when you're formulating that lesson plan. I always think it's good to document. Take photos of student work samples, annotate it where possible. Note down if you assisted students to do something. Just TA is fine, teacher assisted. Marking is something that's very debatable depending on what you're doing and the ethos and values of your school. Feedback is more important. And if you guys are studying Hattie at university, If you're not, you should be. You take it upon yourself to look up Professor John Hattie. We know that feedback is the most effective, it has the highest effect size for student learning. Teacher collaboration is another one. So use those opportunities to team teach with your teacher. Yes, it's important that you teach on your own. However, us as experienced teachers, we are team teaching. This is not something that you do as a fad. It's a great way to bounce ideas off each other, utilize each other's strengths to learn off each other, and really just cater for all of the needs in your classroom. So if you have the opportunity to do that, you can say to your mentor teacher, I really want to practice team teaching. Can we do that together? And then you can give me some feedback later on, you know, how I can improve or what I did well, or if what I did was in fact team teaching, or was it just being in the same room together? How does that work? These are your opportunities to get that kind of feedback. So those are the main things I've got there about lesson planning and that reality of planning lessons. Like I said, the actual bit of paper itself, the thing that goes into your program, that's not the hardest part. Typing that up and putting the information in there, that's not the hardest part. It's the logistics, it's the outside part of it, the actual thing that's going on in your classroom that gets tricky. And really it just comes down to, I guess, the structure of your day, what's going on in your school. Something will come up that will interrupt you. There will always be something, and you need to be prepared for it. And the best skill that you can develop yourself in terms of running a quality lesson extends beyond your knowledge of the curriculum, extends beyond your knowledge of the curriculum and your skills in that particular key learning area. It comes down to, you know, your resilience to deal with things as they come up, your flexibility to change as needed, your adaptability, being able to differentiate for the kids in the class, and just making sure that you're catering for the different ways that kids learn, the different ways that they explore, and really what works for you best as a practitioner in the classroom as well. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's what we do as learners. And we're lifelong learners. We should all be lifelong learners. That's the best part of this. And don't be afraid to come away and go, that lesson sucked. You've got to be reflective on those things and go, right, I come away, there's paint all on the walls, Johnny hurt himself, Sarah's crying, I don't know what to do. Why is there a parent at the door? It's only 12 o'clock. You know, all those random things that can come up during the day, they happen. And really what defines you as an educator is how you react to those situations, how you respond, and how you can step away from it and reflect on it and then come back bigger and better and be able to improve. All right. Hopefully that was helpful. A lot of information there. I'm going to leave it there though. I'm going to put my button down here. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, you can hover over that and click to subscribe. I will put one of my other videos at the top there. And if you are near the end of your studies, you might want to watch my video this weekend for casual teachers. Bye.